All right, do we have roll call?
Here we go. Roll call. Chris.
Here.
Dave.
Here.
Richard.
Here.
Otis.
Here.
Yancy. Tor.
Oh, sorry.
And Carly.
Here.
Hey, do we have any amendments to the previous meeting's minutes? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the previous meeting's minutes?
So moved.
I wasn't here. I don't know what went on that meeting.
Yeah, neither was I, so.
Do we have a second?
It was in December.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, are there any amendments to the agenda for this meeting? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the agenda for this meeting?
I so move.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. We have a motion to open the public hearing. We have a public hearing for an application from the Petersburg Borough and Kim Kosovo, or Kavisto, sorry, for replat of lots 5, 7, and 10A located at 203 and 205 South 3rd Street. Have a motion?
Yes. I make a motion that we open the public hearing, or I second it.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Excuse
We-
me,
yeah.
Mr. Chairman, are you opening public hearing for all 3 items or just for that one?
Should we just do them individually?
It's up to you. I'm just
Let's
asking.
do them individually.
Okay. So you have to open and close
Yeah,
each one then?
we'll open and close each one.
Okay.
Do we have any testimony from the public on this public hearing? You'd need to step up to the microphone, please. So otherwise, it will not record because we do not have mics out in the audience.
And Kim, if you could state your name,
Yes.
just for the record.
Kim Kivisto. And I recently purchased the land and the house that is adjacent to this lot from Kurt and Sharon Kivisto, and we've been paying rent on the land next to it. Well, I wanted to purchase that land, but the fence for the city shop is partly on the land, so they're looking at to replat it so it's actual footage. And so I could purchase that and get it in my name.
Any questions?
Would they need to move the fence at all, Kim, or would they would just make it yours up to
Yeah,
the fence
I
line?
would rather them do that. That seems
Okay.
like an awful lot of expense to move that fence.
Okay.
I probably, I walk back there, but it's not like I'm going to do any changes. Part of my steps are on that lot, and 2 woodsheds, which is why I have to pay the rent for it.
Right.
And I've been doing that for like 15 years. And I'd like to get all of it put in my name, so it's easier to leave for the kids, so they don't have to go through all this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Do you have any additional testimony? We have a motion to close the public hearing.
I so move.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have a public hearing for an application from Jerry and Stacy Dahl, Jay and Charisse Lister, and Olivia Olson for a rezone of lots, 10 lots located at 708, 710, 712, 804, 806 South Nordic Drive. Do we have a motion to open the public hearing?
I so move.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have public testimony to this rezone. If so, please.
Hello, Hello, Glo
Hello.
Wallen, Harbor Master, and I'm just here as a Harbor Master. I oversee property that is just north of that, where the drive-down facility is, industrial land, as well as the harbor. And I'm a fierce defender of industrial property. We're not making any more waterfront. We're not making any more industrial property, as it seems. And as the harbor grows, we run into issues when we have, especially housing development, things like that, adjacent to the harbor. In fact, this afternoon, I had a person come in that lives above the South Harbor, and he came and asked me, what can I do to put a couple of signs up on the South Harbor ramp? I said, well, you're going to go through me and got to put it up properly. And well, what's going on? I mean, this was a retired fellow. He said, well, I get up at 2 o'clock in the morning to go to the bathroom. And when I get out into my hallway, there's bright lights that are shining up from the South Harbor ramp, the pedestrian ramp, and they really bother me. So I'm wondering if I could put some signs up there just to block that light from shining up my hallway. And this is not an unusual conversation that I have, not in that particular instant, of the lights. But I get a lot of people coming in, sometimes fairly irate, that live in the apartment buildings there just above the South Harbor because of noise, lights, activity that goes on in the industrial setting of the harbor. And I just caution you about rezoning an area to allow those kind of things adjacent to a real industrial facility in that drive down. I can see, I remember when the council at the time okayed Herbranson's putting in their bed and breakfast back then, and with promises to put in a float. That's why they had to build there, because they were going to put a float system in, and they were going to rent skiffs to people staying at their bed and breakfast. So Harbor Board was against it. The city council at the time said okay. Of course, that never happened. Now we're 2 or 3, owners down, and of course that's not ever going to happen. And I just am concerned about, the future. We have the cold storage at that location. When we put that in, I remember the Upland people being upset about the noise, and so we had to go to extra expense to buffer that. We had a pop machine out in front that neighbors got all excited about. That was very offensive to them, so we had to move the pop machine to the back side of the cold storage. And these are the kinds of things that end up happening. At some point, we don't know. That approach is very big, and it is, we've filled all of that to get out to deeper water. What were to happen if we had Tonka come to us when we didn't quite know what we were going to end up doing out there and propose putting in a new shrimp cannery. And Upland went a little crazy about that. I mean, in the conversations, I heard a lot about that wouldn't pass muster. And so those are the kinds of things. We have a work float down there with 2 workstations on the inside of that drive down. That's where I will send people to needle gun. And I don't know if a lot of you Otises have been around needle gunning, but when you turn a guy loose at 5 o'clock in the morning needle gunning, and you've got people in a bed and breakfast, they don't know what they're getting into. It's one thing when you can tell somebody that built a house there that said, well, I'm sorry, you built next to industrial land. I told this fellow today. But those are the things that we run into. So that's just what I'm here for, to kind of protect that as industrial, keep it the way it is. When people bought it, they knew what they were getting into. And I don't blame the people there for doing that. But anyway, that's my testimony. So, yeah.
Has the Harbor Board had a chance to
They
weigh in
have
on
not. We don't have a quorum. Mike Bangs is out on medical, and so when Liz, she called me when you were going to have a meeting, and I just didn't have enough people,
Okay.
To gather. But when they get back, I'm sure we'll have a meeting.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
If I recall, when we were looking at the Menicius property and doing that, the Harbor Board pretty strongly gave us a hint that they weren't in favor of that because this is zoned, I forget the exact classification from our comprehensive plan, but I do remember the consultant saying one thing, and he said, whatever you do, don't let any long-term leases or changes of zoning in this he had very few specific areas pointed on the map. He said, forget everything else I'm doing, but make sure you don't let anything happen to this that's going to be long-term. And his takeaway that I had from that was you have to be looking out, maybe not 5 years, maybe not 10 years, but be looking out 50 years. And, who knows what's going to happen 50 years from now.
I've been, personally involved in that drive down for
Right.
from the beginning.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, yeah. So I guess if this wasn't in front of the Harbor Board, I know you're on a limb, but do you think they would be in favor of this or oppose it?
I don't believe so. They weren't
Okay.
in favor of.
That was what I
Yeah,
was.
they weren't in favor of
Okay.
things before. But yeah, I'm just speaking as the harbor master.
Okay.
Just cautioning the staff member. So.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you.
My name's Stacy Dahl, and we're actually, one of the folks that put the letter in, and you've all read that, right? So you've
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't really have anything to say in addition to that, except it's really kind of funny to listen to what Glo says, because it's my husband that's Nido Gunning, and it's us that sees the lights. I mean, we live there, and so we're really not asking for anything really that doesn't suit us as residents in that area. I mean, we know what we're up for. We live there. We've lived there for a long time. We've owned this property for a long time, and so it's really about what's usable for us as well and what we can do to use this property and how we see that it may be well suited. The points that we put in the letter that we wrote, kind of speak for themselves in that the water accessibility and the speed of the traffic that goes by and kind of the usability of that space for any larger industrial purpose. I mean, we really kind of doubt the feasibility of that. I mean, not that it might not fit into the master plan. It's kind of looking specifically at those particular lots and how they sit with the surrounding areas. And so it's not that we personally have any big plan as to what we want to do with this property. And I do understand, I'm sure you do get those complaints and whatnot, but personally, we're not the ones calling in and we're the ones who own the property. And so it's like we would just like to have some flexibility over time. Like I said, we don't have a master plan, but we do see that it's very limited in what it presents right now as far as space and usability, traffic patterns, and all the things that we listed there. And so I probably don't have a whole lot to add to that. But, and when you talk about taking this plan further down the road, say 20 years or so, I don't know if we'll be there in 20 years. I would, at this point, think we probably will be, but who's to know? But right now, we are the owners of those properties, and, there are two existing structures on either side. Olivia has the small piece I think it's probably adjacent to the cold storage lot, but we have a larger portion in the middle that's completely undeveloped. And so right now, it's our water view, and we'd like to keep it that way, but we're aware that was going to be discussed, and we thought this would be a good time to throw it up there.
You don't have any specific plans for the
No,
property?
we've talked,
Yeah.
how it is when you have property and you're
Yeah.
looking at this the whole time. We've talked about, maybe do this, maybe do that, and all the things that we've come up with, not for ourselves per se, but how that land could be well used, have been more fitting with the commercial definitions, not industrial. I mean, like I said, I live right there, and so I'm not likely to want something that's unsightly. And it's my water view. So, I mean, my plans to change it are not in the immediate future at all. I mean, because I value it the way it is. But, if it were to be changed, what would I want to see there? Literally see there. And how could it be useful? I mean, that's not your concern. What it looks like from my living room window is not your concern. It's how useful it is. But it's not accessible by the water, and so to consider it as far as the comprehensive plan is, as far as usability from the water side, I think is extremely limited. And I do think, I know that it's industrial land, and I can't imagine that would escape anybody who, in the future may want to. I get complaints from the bed and breakfast about my 8-pound dog barking, so that just happens.
Yes, Dave?
I guess my concern is, I mean, under industrial, what it's currently zoned for, you can put up a commercial, you can put up, basically, you can put up a commercial, like you can put up a retail store, you can do any number of commercial activities under the industrial classification. The only thing you can't do under industrial that's really different than commercial is you can't do a multifamily dwelling, you can't put in a bed and breakfast, you can't basically do anything that's got people living in it. More than, I guess the code now allows for quote-unquote a caretaker shack or dwelling, which, so, I mean, it's
understand that.
yeah, so I guess my question is, why would you want to go through the process of getting the zoning changed? Except unless you thought at some point in the future it'd be more useful for like condominiums, apartments,
Well,
residential.
more tourist-based, likely, I mean, those things that we've thought of, not that we would do that
Right.
or planning to do that or anything like that, but we've just, I mean, we've had these properties, we lived in the home right behind it.
Right.
So we've been right on this block and in this area
Right.
for 20 years now. And so the waterfront has changed a lot in 20 years. It's
Right.
grown up a lot. That whole landfill was just water and boats. And so we've watched that change in front of us. And it still has one of the best harbor and mountain views in Petersburg. And so I guess not that I'm planning to do that kind of thing. I guess I don't discount the idea that that could be a very valuable place for something like that when you talk about the return that you get for what you put on that property business-wise. So that's all.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
One of the other comments that we made on there, I mean, because we do live there and we have to enter and exit traffic in that area, when we think about industrial uses for that particular property, I mean, I suppose maybe I'm not thinking big enough as to if somebody wanted to do a big fill project like what they did there, but I do know that that's costly and it would be a pretty large investment, and the space might be a little limited for that large of an investment, you know what I mean? I mean, I'm talking about the usability of those particular lots. So it's not an easy space, because right now with industrial land, I mean, there are differences as to how you have to fence things and whatnot too. I've read the regulations, commercial versus industrial, how you keep those lots as well. And so another consideration was having to do with how accessible is it even from the roadside as to the use and the bringing in of pallets or gear or what. I mean, it's a 30-mile-an-hour road there, and it's a slight curve, and so there's some visibility issues. I mean, it's all kind of, just because we live there, we kind of live with this on a pretty regular basis. And so literally, it's just what's conducive to that particular space. Okay, I think I'm done now. All right. Any more questions?
Thank you. Do you have any additional testimony? I was going to ask the commissioners if you think we should continue this public hearing until we hear from the Harbor Board. Or you guys feel you want to make a recommendation? I personally think that we should hear from the Harbor Board.
I'd like to hear from the Harbor Board as well, even though I trust Glow.
Yeah.
It would be nice to have official word from the Harbor Board.
And it just doesn't seem like anybody has a major rush on making a decision on this.
So deferring 1 month probably won't hurt anything.
Yeah, I'd be more inclined to defer to the Harbor Board on this one, since it's
Yeah.
kind of their core area. I mean, I'm just reluctant, right after we did spent all that time on that big master plan to,
Well, that's why I would like to really hear from the Harbor Board. So I think if we continue the public hearing, we can accept the testimony from the Harbor Board into the public hearing and then make our recommendation at a future meeting.
yeah, I'm okay with that.
So then would this be discussed at a Harbor Board
And then, if I could, then, I mean, you have there's a bunch of meetings you can go to. You can go to the Harbor Board meeting, then it'll come back to this group again, and then after we hear from the Harbor Board, then that's when we make the
We
decision.
make a recommendation to the Borough Assembly, and the Borough Assembly has the final say.
Yeah, and usually on a changing and zoning, that will go in front of the Assembly. And when we've made recommendation to change the zoning in the past, they didn't accept it. So that's just, so yeah, you can go to a bunch more meetings.
So do we have a motion to continue?
I make a motion that we defer, or that we leave the public hearing open on this matter until we have heard from the Harbor Board.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving on to a public hearing for an application from Stan and Karen Malcolm for a minor subdivision at 105 Mill Road. We have a motion to open the public hearing.
I so move.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do we have any testimony on the public hearing?
I'm Stan Malcolm. Karen and I own the property at 105 Mill Road. I think the application is fairly self-explanatory. The reasoning behind the application is our piece of property is a little bit larger than we need for our gear and boat storage. One of the other property owners on Mill Road has expressed an interest in purchasing a portion of the property to facilitate additional gear storage for himself, and that's the reason we did this.
Thank you, Stan.
And it looks like it would create a pretty standard 50 by 100 lot.
I drove up there today, and it seemed pretty straightforward what they were asking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at it up there too. My only question is, would there be any issue with, just from looking at the line here where the shed is at? I know looks like a temporary boat shed. Will that be, that's okay, right, because of the zoning and that?
It's zoned industrial.
Industrial, so that's okay, right? No.
No. It would, it would have to get moved away from the property line if this line got created.
Okay, that was my question.
Unless, I don't know how far away it is.
It's approximately 3 feet from the...
Yeah. Oops, sorry. But
It's approximately 3 feet from where the new property line would be if we made that 50 by 100 foot lot.
could that shed get moved?
The shed
3 foot is too close unless you make a firewall out of that boat shed.
It'll come down.
Okay.
It'll come down.
And that would be, it would either have to get firewalled or have to move, you could move it 10 feet away and not have fire protection. So if that's understood, I guess if it goes through here.
And that 7 foot wouldn't be a problem, Stan, to move it that 7 feet, to make it 10 feet? Or is your plan to just demolish it?
There's a plan to demolish it. Okay. There's an old boat inside that I'm rebuilding, and that's about done, and we're going to move it out and tear the shed down. It was never meant to be a permanent structure there.
Yeah, that's the only issue there.
So would it be reasonable to, I'm not making a motion here, but to include a requirement that that shed be dismantled within a certain period of time? Dismantled or moved?
I think it's Liz.
I was going to say you could add that condition that that be taken care of before the plat is signed and recorded. Yeah. Which guarantees that it would be in compliance when the plat's approved and that then actually creates the 2 lots. So, but I guess we could talk about that during deliberations,
Yes.
if you'd like.
So do we have a motion to close the public hearing if there's no further testimony?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Do we have any visitors' views related to agenda items? Do you have any visitors' views unrelated to agenda items? Any report from staff members?
Mr. Chairman, they're all in your packet. I'm sure you've read them already.
Yes. We have no unfinished business, so moving on to new business. Consideration of an application from the Petersburg Borough and Kim Cavisto for a replat of lots 5, 7, and 10A. Do we have a motion to approve?
I so move.
Second?
I'll second it.
Discussion?
I think it's a good deal. I think we should go ahead with it.
I think it's
I
a
don't see
smart
there's any
idea.
problem with it.
Question?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we've continued the public hearing on the recommendation to the borough concerning the rezone. So, we have a motion to consider the application from Stan and Karen Malcolm for a minor subdivision at 105 Mill Road with the condition that the shed be taken down before the plat is signed.
I'll make such a motion.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
What?
I was just going to say that he could, if things change, he could just move it too.
Yeah.
As long as it complies with the fire
Okay, do we
code.
want to amend that to
Yes.
taken
Yeah,
down or moved?
Yeah, just,
Or comply
Or
comply
you
with
could
fire
comply
code.
too, if you
Yeah.
decided to leave, I don't know what, I haven't looked at it yet. If you
Yeah.
decided to come in and sheet rock the thing, make it compliance for fire, you could do that too. Just so it's, one way or the other, it's in compliance. It's whatever he chooses to do, he's got those options.
Okay, so we'll rephrase that to bring it into compliance as per the building official.
that's a little broad.
Yeah. Well, I said, there's 3 things he could do. He could
Yeah.
move it and not do anything with the structure. He could tear it down, or he could build a firewall.
Okay?
I don't know, is it built out of wood, or is it a tarp building, or?
It's a 4-foot plywood wall and then just a tarp.
Yeah, it'd be hard to get the tarp to be,
To be,
the PVC
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, it'd be hard to get that fire
It would be hard
compliant.
to move it the way it is. I guess my question would be,
Don't worry, Stan, she does it to everybody.
Yeah.
I guess my question would be, regardless of what goes on the other property, there would need to be a firewall in there, or it would need to be moved.
Correct. The property line is what dictates everything. Anything that he does on that side of the property line is going to have to follow the same rules. He's talking about doing something that would have a firewall there, being closer, so, yeah, it's just, the line is the line,
Okay.
and that's it. That, once we create that line, it doesn't go away, so any building close to that line has to comply.
What's the setback, 10 feet?
There's no setbacks in industrial.
It's no setbacks, it's just
fire
fire
codes.
fire protection.
Okay.
So,
But it needs to be 10 feet.
If before you do nothing, yeah. If you go 5 feet, you can be. I'm reading without. I need my book. I think if you go 5 to 10 feet, it has to be 1 hour. Then you're less than 5 feet, you're like 2 hour, which would be pretty hard to achieve. With the PVC type roof, you're not going to achieve it any way you look at it because you can't sheet rock that stuff. So I think the only two options is move it or take it down.
And also, Mr. Chairman, just on in the staff report, we would also, as part of the conditions, we need an actual plat from a surveyor with all the required certificates. So that would be the other condition that would need to be met before we could. Just wanted to make sure that got included.
Okay.
You want me to read you the motion?
Yes.
Okay. That we approve the permit with the following conditions: that any structures comply with current industrial zoning regulations, and that that there would be an actual surveyed plat. Is that right, Liz?
It's
I could
not,
probably rephrase that.
It's not industrial zoning regulation, it's fire code. Because there is no setback on industrial zoning. So what we're really trying to get him to do is meet fire code. Yeah.
Okay, well, in other words, it has to meet industrial zoning.
Meets fire
Just
code.
fire code.
Just meet fire code, okay. Okay.
Second?
A second.
All in favor?
Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, acceptance and scheduling of an application from National Outdoor Leadership School for conditional use permit to allow a bunkhouse dormitory in industrial district at 908 South Nordic Drive. We have a motion to accept this for our next meeting.
I so move.
A second?
Any discussion?
Where exactly is this?
Yeah, that's my question.
The ACE,
Ace.
Commercial Electronics Building.
Jerry.
Oh.
Burns Place.
Page 31.
Well, yeah, I saw the picture, but
Yeah.
if I knew where the coffee shop was and where Ace was.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Discussion items. Airport parking.
Yeah, I asked this to be on our agenda. Back about the first of the year, I was working with the state on another unrelated project for work, and I got a hold of the person from Airport Leasing. Her name is Lynette Campbell, and had a conversation with her about getting some more parking at the airport. Basically, the gist of it was the state's broke. They can't afford to pay for anything. But then she sent me a copy of this, these statutes, well, administrative codes, and you guys have a copy of specifically, starts on page 47, but of this 17 Alaska Administrative Code 45.130, and she suggested that the borough could acquire a lease from the state for the property right across the street from the Alaska Airlines terminal, and which belongs to the airport. And according to this number 2 on this, the state could lease this property to us, to the borough, for free, because it's in support of the airport and operations. So I'm not really sure too much on how to proceed with this, but I bet the Borough Assembly...
I think we could make a recommendation.
Yeah, I think we should make a recommendation to the Borough Assembly to pursue something like this. I'm not sure how much additional parking we need. This is just kind of a new idea. I know for a long time we've needed more parking at the airport, and certainly this is a way of getting it. And the location's great. The bike path isn't shown on here, But there's a couple of spots on this where it could be a one-way in, one-way out, back up to Haugen. And she suggested that we look at the way Ketchikan does their airport parking. It's $1 a day. She said there was a lot of public opposition to charging initially, but then really if you're over the limit for parking at the airport right now, you already get a ticket sometimes, but it's only a $10 ticket. If we pursue this, we need to figure out a way to pay for the rock, and $1 a day for parking would probably cover it.
Yeah, I can't see us asking the Borough Assembly to take on something else that's going to cost the borough money without some recommendation of a way to pay for it. So,
When we talked about this earlier, I looked into it a little bit, and what they have down south, and they're pretty slick. They're just, and that would actually cost a little bit of money, but they're like, it's like a kiosk, a stand. Ideally, you could put it over inside the airport terminal. And you just go over there and however many days you want to park, you push in a credit card, charges you, it sticks out a receipt. It says on the receipt until you can program them however you want, and it would say on there, okay, you're good to park until whatever day, and you just pay $1 a day.
that's what
for that.
Ketchikan has for
Yeah.
theirs, is just there are a whole bunch of little kiosks right there in a
Yeah.
little shed at the parking lot.
Yeah, there's
You
not that
punch
complicated.
in your spot number. and-
Yeah. Well, you don't even have to punch in a spot number.
Well, in Ketchikan you do.
Yeah.
Punch in your spot number, how many days you want.
Yeah, but they got asphalt there, and we
Yeah.
probably won't.
Yeah, this, I would see one that you just prints out a ticket and you throw it
Yeah,
in
it just
the
prints out a
dashboard.
ticket, and then you just
Stick it in your window.
stick it in
Yeah.
your window, and you're ready to go. And
And you could do that generally when you're checking your bags, go and prepay for your parking, and then go home, check your mail or whatever, and then come back and just park in the lot,
Yeah.
and then walk into the terminal and
Right.
fly away.
right.
And the paid parking in Portland is similar to that. You just stick the sticker on your window
Right.
so they can see. The one little concern is we have pretty nasty weather sometimes, and sometimes the people are a little bit late because of the weather. And so there's going to be probably a little bit of an occasional problem of people overstaying what they've paid. But I'm not really sure how to deal with that.
My observation on the enforcement of long-term parking up at the airport is pretty minimal right now. I mean, there's some vehicles up there that have been there for many months, so I don't think there's really a lot of enforcement going on currently.
But if we start charging for parking, it would probably mean some reason to do
Yeah.
more enforcement up there.
That'd be nice, but the thing I'd also like to point out is the current airport's not in compliance right now. If we ever went up to another security level, if you guys remember after 9/11, you couldn't park in front of the airport, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I forget how many feet away you're supposed to be from it. So right now, you're not supposed to be able to pull right up and park right up against the airport building according to the FAA anyway. So if they actually started enforcing those regulations, something like this would be.
We'd be desperately in need of
Yeah,
a parking lot.
we'd definitely be in need to it, because heaven forbid, if there's another, some sort of activity that requires a different level of security there, that's one of the first things they're going to do. So I don't know how much money we can make on parking. I guess you could sit down and figure out how big of a parking lot it's going to be, and
A lot of years.
yeah, it'd take quite a few years to pay for it.
But regardless, sounds like the state is pretty willing to work with us on this.
Right.
This is going to benefit them as
Yeah.
well.
So do we want to, I don't know, Nancy? Can I put you on the spot?
Go ahead.
What do you think?
I think that long-term parking fees are way more than people want to pay parking a long-term parking lot. What is long-term parking in Seattle, about $200 a day?
Yeah, no, well, we're not talking about Seattle rates, we're talking about $1 a day.
Oh, well, that's not enough. People who are leaving town for a couple of weeks need to drive up there,
car home and either get a ride back or take a cab.
I'd like to point out, it's a $55 cab ride for me to do that. So I'm just pointing it out that, you know,
Perhaps you should have a friend drive you.
yeah.
But the cost of it, this has been discussed before, maybe not at the, but I was talking to Joe about it a few years ago. Digging out the Muskeg, exorbitantly expensive.
Mr.
So
Chair,
unless you charge an exorbitant amount to park,
I don't think, I don't know, I'm not an expert on this, but I don't think it'd be that expensive. All you have to do is put down mat and rock, and what, you know, maybe what we could do before we present this to the assembly is get a rough idea how big of a parking lot we're talking about, and go ask the Reeds what it would take to put a pad and a mat down.
And being a gravel pad, if you have some settlement there, which
Being a
would be
gravel lot, yeah.
Yeah,
then you just put some more rock on it later.
Yeah.
yeah, right, yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
shot rock.
Yeah.
gravel's too expensive.
I know, I mean, yeah, I understand it'd be prohibitive to dig down a hard pan and backfill it.
Well, they're having problems at the fire hall right now with frost heaves,
Oh, yeah, I understand.
and sounds to me like they
Right,
didn't Muskeg out.
right, that's a nice thing about gravel pad.
Plus, in order to come up with the money to build this parking lot, we'll have to give up something else. What does everybody want to give up?
Well, I think, first off here, we've got a lot of roads on this island that are built without excavating. It's shot rock on top of Muskeg. And if they settle, so what?
When I was working for highways on the straightening of the Midcoast Highway, Mullen was, SS Mullen. I was in the scale shack, and the boss came over and said, how many tons have you taken over? And I told him, and they went back and looked, and they were still on the riprap, dumping riprap in there. And then somebody noticed how the muskeg on either side of the road was rising. Dig out more muskeg.
Well, one of the things that I think needs to be done is look at this spot, and if it's one of those places that simply won't hold a road or a parking lot, sometimes you don't have to move it very far.
Well, all I know is I've discussed this very thing, building a parking lot up there. Right, it would have to be across the road, but I think the problem, especially with other cars there for months, there's cars there that have been so long, their registration has expired.
I posted a Facebook photo of it, and then it disappeared before I flew home.
They did haul some of them away earlier late last year, last summer sometime. But it's still a problem.
I think respectfully, anytime you have a parking lot, people are going to park vehicles and walk away from them. I mean, I have a problem with that on private property all the time, and all you got to do is take down and look at Pappy's. You know, I mean, you know, I think a lot of people, they drive up to the airport, they park their car, they hop on the plane, and they leave, you know, and they don't have any intentions of coming back.
Well, and they leave for the winter, van parked up there.
Right.
Apparently, some of those vans are now renting space in long-term parking behind the. But I think before you want to send something like this to the borough assembly, you need to get an estimate of cost. How it's going to be paid for, whether you're going to raise sales tax, whether you're going to not plow the snow as often, whatever, wherever you're going to cut.
What's with the parking lot farther toward the south?
Toward where?
Well, next to,
On the Grogan Aviation
Yeah.
down that building. That's public parking down there. You can park down there right now.
Where, by the fence?
yeah,
That's state, it's state, and when you go to talk to the state about it, they say, oh, that's a city problem. City has to enforce that. And when you talk to the city says, oh, no, that's a state problem.
then, in other words, I can park there without a problem. Nobody will bother me if I park my car there for a week.
because the city police don't have enough, they aren't ticketing parking on Main Street either.
I kind of like that, but I see the reason to do it, though.
I think if we, per Nancy's discussion, maybe, I don't know if somebody would want to talk to the Reeds and see, or Rock and Road, and see if they could take a look at the spot and give a rough ballpark. I mean, how big of a parking lot are we talking about? 3 acres? 5 acres?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think it's that big.
Well, the site's pretty good size. I mean, I looked at leasing this site from the state 20 years ago, and we actually had, it wasn't the Reeds, somebody else went out there and actually looked at what it was going to take to put a pad in. And at the time, we were going to put like about an 1.5 acre pad, and it was going to cost about $35,000. But that was 20 years ago, of course.
Yeah.
So, and we were planning on using it to park heavy things on it.
The whole airport is built out of, they didn't excavate that, did they?
I have no idea, I wasn't living there at the time.
No, that's what they had the problem when they
Yeah, well,
had to redo the culverts over there. They did excavate it, they just started,
It's something you need to talk to the state about, because it's state land.
right.
So,
all I know for sure is there's a lot of,
core samples to see how
yeah,
deep the mustard is.
there's a lot of Forest Service road all over here.
And
Just,
there could be,
yeah.
but in order to spend a lot of borough money right now for something.
You're right.
You're gonna have to give something up.
Well, I think what we'd be doing is, I understand the borough's not going to write a check for a parking lot right now. It would be to look for other avenues of getting some of the money up front. That would indeed be an issue. I don't think it's going to be a lot. I think it's going to be under $100,000, but I could be incorrect.
I need to talk to Reed Brothers
Yeah.
on something unrelated. I can give them a call later this week.
Right, yeah, because they'll go out and take a look at it. I mean, I looked at it quite a few years ago, and we poked around out there. We had rebar, we poked down, we hit blue clay at about 20 feet in some parts, and other parts 12 feet, so other parts found no bottom, so.
And just looking at this photo, comparing it to our existing parking would only occupy, if you just shifted that over, it would only occupy a quarter of that square, and it would double the parking. So, yeah, I'll look at, or I'll talk to Reed Brothers, and at least that'll give us a rough estimate. And I don't know, I should probably give Rock and Road a call as well.
Yeah, because the source of money that I've identified that, and I haven't sussed it out completely, is an FAA grant. They have quite a bit of money for airport improvement. I mean, they spent $55 million to replace the culverts in the runway a few years ago, so they could continue landing planes that we probably won't have landing here in the future. But so there's quite a bit of money like that around. It's just a matter of somebody identifying it and then figure out, and then you have to have a mechanism so that you can maintain it, and that's where the parking fees would come in.
Perhaps the thing to do is encourage someone to build it privately
You can't.
and charge.
The problem is, see, since it's state land, they'll lease it to the city, lease to the borough.
The state can lease it to the borough for no cost, but if the state leases it to anyone else, they have to charge.
Yeah, it's a nightmare to do.
What?
They have to charge.
Charge.
Well, if the borough builds it, they're gonna have to charge as well.
Not according to the Alaska Administrative Code.
Well, the Alaska Administrative Code,
No, the borough can charge people to park there. It's just that the state doesn't charge the borough for the use of the property, is what he's saying.
Yes.
So,
when the state figures out a way to balance the budget, then I say go for it.
well, I think if you could get some more numbers on that.
Yeah.
How many cars would we want to have parked there?
I'll just go take a look at our existing parking, how many cars are parked there when it's full. I can just drive up there at lunch one day this week, count.
You need room for twice that many, I'd think, though.
Yeah, well, if we could at least double it with the potential of adding more, we'd be way ahead of where we're at right now.
And Dave, did you say that you were roughing kind of an idea through the FAA grant or through an FAA grant?
Yeah, that's one pot of money. There's also, who knows what's going to happen nationally if we had a small project that was ready to go.
This wouldn't take much.
This wouldn't take much. But the problem is that I know the borough will have is how are you going to maintain it? And that's where charging for the parking would come in. So we'd have to ideally find grant money, or a good percentage of it would be grant money, to pay for the construction of it, and then you'd have to have some mechanism of recapturing revenue so you can maintain it long-term.
All right. Do you have any additional discussion on this, or should we move on to the zoning code?
Can we put this on the agenda for next meeting as well, to come back to it?
Sure.
And yeah, we're good.
We'll put it back in as discussion items again and just go from there. Liz?
Okay. Last but not least, as mentioned previously, we are looking at revising, I shouldn't say revising, of making a new zoning code for the borough. And instead of just handing you hundreds of pages of zoning code all at once, I thought we could go through key portions of it. And I understand you may not have had a chance to read all of it before this meeting, but that's okay. This is just an introduction to it, and then, feel free. I'll have it on the agenda at the next meeting. And if you have comments, just go ahead and either email me or you can bring them up at the meeting. This is still a work in progress, and there's still opportunity, of course, at the end we'll have a whole public hearing process before it gets forwarded to the assembly. So there's still ample opportunity to get your comments in. But just quickly, I chose Article 1 because it was really short, and a portion of Article 4 because it covers the application review procedures, which is what you all are a part of. So I thought that would be of interest. But I'll just, if it's okay, just quickly go through Article 1, and then if anyone has any questions, just go ahead and stop me. But Article 1 begins with a really handy overview of the rest of the code so that you know all the different parts of it. So Article 1 through 5. And then it goes on to discuss the purpose of the zoning code, requires compliance with it, has some rules on how you would interpret the language, talks about the comprehensive plan, the zoning map, which is included by reference. We don't actually put the map into the code. And then talks about that you would need land use approvals and building permits before moving forward. Then we get to Chapter 1.3, which is lots of record and legal lot determination. That's actually something new. And it lays out a process where we would determine whether your lot was in existence before we passed the code so that you would fit in with, be a non-conforming use. So you kind of get the grandfathered in aspect of it. Right now, people ask and we're like, yeah, but we don't really have a process if they don't agree with our decision or how we would go about doing that or a clear definition of what that is. And then chapter 1.4 is dealing with non-conforming situations. And there's a couple of changes specifically from what we have right now, which is you're not allowed to expand a non-conforming use or a non-conforming development under the code. So for instance, if you have a business or a building that does not meet code, if you wanted to expand that business, you would not be allowed to because you're non-conforming.
No. Which code is, that's the
existing one now.
That's the zoning or the
It's the
building
zoning.
code?
The zoning code. The proposed one would allow folks to expand if you have a non-conforming use, but under a conditional use permit. So that way, the folks in the neighborhood could say, yeah, we don't have a problem with this getting a little bit larger or this getting a little bit, basically a little bit larger than it is now. So it gives some flexibility to people who are already operating and already have an investment in their business.
I did have a question, especially when I had some other notes prior to this section, but in this section, it starts using the word like shall not exceed. Can that be waived by the Planning and Zoning Committee, or I almost kind of prefer to see the word should, because shall sounds like the Planning and Zoning can't.
Exactly.
What?
That's what that means. When it's shall, there is no discretion.
Yeah, I'm thinking I'd like to still allow the Planning and Zoning to be able to exercise some discretion.
So the discretion comes in the conditional use permit, but
Okay.
in general, we would say, like, you couldn't, if you have a non-conforming use, you're not going to be allowed to double the size and make it 2 times more non-conforming than it is now. So it's
But-
limiting what you can do, as opposed to now where you can't do anything.
The other question I have on that particular part of it is, how detailed are you guys going to get as far as changes in use? Say, somebody has a business and they're not going to change the footprint of their business, but they want to add a new piece of machinery. Is that going to be a big issue or not?
Me, no, because you're
Because
not.
I've seen down south where any new piece of machinery calls up a major issue.
This is limited to the use and the development, so that's the actual use and then the structure, right?
Okay.
Those are the 2 things that we're looking at.
That's just what I'm trying to clarify there. So, and we might want to.
And secondly, I don't think anyone would
Yeah.
have to come and talk to us if they were just going to put in a new piece of machinery unless they were actually
Expanding.
having to add on to
Yeah.
add that piece of machinery. Right. So we probably wouldn't even necessarily be aware of it. Right?
So you should put in there, Liz, somewhere, not like down south.
I think you have to sort of
Yeah.
assume that throughout.
Yeah.
And then when we get into alterations on this, it says not more than one such variance.
Right, so we would allow people to have a variance for a non-conforming, but then you're not going to have 10 variances for non-conforming, so you can get another one. You're already non-conforming, but you can get another variance on non-conforming. But we're not going to go ad nauseum on the,
Was
on
that
the
going to
variances.
be, is there going to be a time period on that, or is it going to be, you got one and that's it?
Because what if you sell it and then somebody else has this non-conforming and you got the variance, now the other person, since you have got a variance, they can't get a variance.
well, then the variance goes with the land, so it is going to be, right now, I
Yeah.
would say it's 1, but we could change that if you wanted to.
I could see somebody down the road having some need to make a change, a minor change or something to it. And if we say, 1 and that's all you get, I could see saying, okay, you get 1 every so many years. So,
If approved. Yeah.
if approved.
I could also see where, if it's some sort of industrial activity in a residential area,
Yeah.
and we don't have, and we haven't had very strict criteria on when variances are granted and when they're not. Mostly they're granted.
Yeah.
So you could end up with a situation where you're constantly adding more and more because
Yeah.
you don't really have the tools in place to not grant the variance. Just
Yeah.
based on public opposition is not really enough to not grant the variance.
Yeah.
So there might be need for some discretion there, but also I think you need
Yeah.
to have some limits because you have to recognize that the use that you're giving the variance to, it is a non-conforming use. So,
Mhm.
but I can look at it
Yeah.
again and see if I can find some middle ground for
I could see
when we're
that.
granting and when we're not.
I could see that working better if there was like a 5 or 10-year sunset on the not more than one variance thing. So the same person can't come back over and over and over, but there's a reasonable period of time that has to elapse before they can come back.
And where exactly are you reading that
It's
portion of the?
It's 1.4.030A near the third from the last sentence of that paragraph.
On the note page. And the same development. They could, I guess I could see granting it if it was going to improve the situation. We would want to be able to do that.
Yeah, I don't want to have something in here that's going to prohibit us from improving a situation.
Well, the thing is, here it's already written in a way that the approval of variance is required to increase a development's nonconformity, and not more than one variance shall be approved to expand the same development. So if you're not increasing the nonconformity, then I don't think that's going to apply. Do you know what I mean? So basically, we'll give you a variance to make the situation less correct, is what I see. But if you're making the situation better, then you wouldn't apply. Of course, then you may not need a variance. So
Yeah.
it could be like a roundabout argument. I'll have to think about some scenarios and see how it plays out.
That'd be
Yeah.
good for Chapter 5.
A definition of
Well,
nonconformity.
no, isn't that Section 5 where we have the figures?
Oh, figures are throughout, but Part 5 has the
Yeah.
definitions in it. Yeah. Okay, well, we'll look at either setting a time limit on the number or defining it better. There.
And I had one question about section F on page 42. Your intent's to include that into the code or to remove it?
Oh, wait, sorry, let me find page 42. Oh, the junkyards?
Yeah.
So that's currently in the code?
Right.
So I put it back in there? I don't know. It was in there before. It's currently in there.
So that section is currently in our code? Mm-hmm. Oh, gracious.
Yes,
I
I know.
missed that one.
Me too. I was surprised
Yeah,
to find
our
it.
building official's been a little slack.
I thought since it's a bit of an issue, it might be good to have it on the books, but that's currently the way it reads.
It does give Joe some teeth when he needs it.
But again, we can look at it.
No, I mean, I'm not saying I dislike it.
Yeah.
I just,
You're just surprised it's in there?
no, I was thinking maybe you added it in instead of
No.
taking it, but you proposed taking it out.
Oh, no.
I think it should be made a little bit more specific to our situations here if possible.
Talk about boats.
You mean expand it from just vehicles?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I would include vessels, fishing gear.
Well, under the nuisance ordinance, that captures all of that already.
Even if it's derelict
Yeah,
or abandoned.
yeah.
So
The
this
thing-
would be redundant to that.
In a way, the thing with the nuisance ordinance, it's based more on resident complaints. And so if it's just a question of, it's not a code violation, it's just more of an unsightly situation, then you would need multiple people from that area to submit a written complaint. So it kind of gives everyone in the neighborhood, they can all police to their own level of neatness or, however they want to see their neighborhood look. So that's kind of how we've dealt with it to date. And honestly, to date, nobody has been willing to send in a signed letter, I don't think. Not recently. Not just unsightly. So.
I don't like it, but I don't want to make a
Yeah, they don't want to. They'll tell you about it, but they don't actually want to make an
I don't wanna make
official
an issue.
complaint. So, but I'll look and see if it has anything different than what would be captured under nuisance to see if we are just being redundant or if it's actually something different.
I mean, is it a question of enforcement? I mean, the nuisance order, like you said, has to come from complaints that people have submitted, right? Which is probably the way it should be versus coming from the building official.
That's what, when we drafted the nuisance ordinance, we didn't think it was appropriate for us to determine what was acceptable in a neighborhood and what wasn't. So it's pretty subjective. And so if folks are happy with the way things are, then why should we get in the middle of it? And if they're not, then they should let us know.
There are a lot of neighborhoods. No, there are a few neighborhoods that are living up to their neighbors. You can see kind of over time I was going to say something like the property value is going down, but more like the trash level's going up in certain areas of town. So I do think that should definitely be something that the borough needs to step in with. Granted, you and your neighbors feel like this is fine, but you're also part of this community. And a lot of those people maybe don't own their property. So in situations like that, would we need to contact the owners of that property?
As I said, we practice reactive nuisance control. So we're probably very unlikely to go in and say that your yard is a mess and you need to clean it up unless we get
Oh, my letter writing campaign starts today.
at least 3 letters from the neighborhood.
Oh, I gotta move first. Okay.
Exactly. So when you're ready to move,
Okay.
yeah.
One part that just in my quick skim through that came to mind was this section 1.2.060. We were talking about zoning in areas to be annexed.
Mm-hmm.
I think that could be a lot clearer. The way it reads right now, it really is kind of hard to say, okay, how is this going to work, is what people are going to ask. I know as soon as people start reading this. So, I think the wording there could be clearer.
I don't anticipate that we would be annexing new land, but
Well, is this, what
But I
this
think-
is, people are going to say is this is talking about the additional land outside Service Area 1?
No.
As far as the zoning, or that's what the question's going to be? So-
it's not. It's going to be things that are added after this
Okay.
passed. So it doesn't go retro. It's
Okay.
not retroactive. And that wasn't annexed anyway.
Yeah.
Annexation's kind of a separate,
Well, just because it talks about
Legal
the
process.
guide and the designation zoning in the annexed areas, you know, from the comprehensive plan, that's what makes you think, okay, is this going to just immediately adopt all of the zoning outside of Service Area 1 that was recommended in the comprehensive plan? So I think it should be, a little clarification should be put in there as to what that means, just to prevent confusion.
okay. Of land not currently within the borough, maybe? Annexation of land not currently within the borough?
That would be,
Okay.
yeah, just,
On the,
So it's clear we're talking about
yeah, something that's not
not in there now.
currently
Yeah.
in the borough now, right.
on the same general idea, 1.0 or 1.2.05A, the first sentence says this code implements the borough comprehensive plan. I think you might want to add in Service Area 1 at the end of that sentence. This, because otherwise we're going to have people out the road all up in arms about us trying to zone their area. And that can be amended later if another service area is developed or whatever. I think it'll cut down on a lot of.
Well, I would say that there is a part that does apply outside of Service Area 1 of the code, of this code,
So,
that it will.
okay.
But it's not
okay.
zoning.
It's not the zone, it's just going to be
The subdivision.
The subdivision authority.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think we should, when we do subdivision authority, we need to clarify that the subdivision authority is borough-wide,
Right.
so.
Yeah.
The other one that came up in my going through things is there was a section in here where you're talking about the different levels, the legislative decision, level 4.
Oh, I'm going to get to that, but we can.
But
Are
just
we done with this, Article 1? Just before we get there, sorry.
I'm done with what I've looked
Okay.
at, so, yeah.
I thought 1.2.030 was pretty confusing. I'm sorry I don't have much more to add to that, but
Is that
1.2.030 alpha.
confusing?
Yeah, I was confused when I read that. I don't know how to really make it better, but I didn't really understand what it was talking about.
It just basically says everything you do from now on has to comply with this code, so that
Yeah.
Okay.
it's kind of blanket language that,
Yeah, I figured it was, but
yeah, but I hear what you're
I didn't
saying.
understand what it was saying when I read it.
Yeah, I didn't get as many notes as I wanted maybe because I didn't have a
But like I
hard
said,
copy
there's
with
still
me,
time, so don't feel like this is your only opportunity to ask questions or make comments.
And then I thought that 1.2.080 contradicts 1.2.070C. The alpha contradicts C, the last sentence in C. If reviewing the project proposal, the planning determines other permits and approvals required by the development. And then, yeah, kind of thought alpha.
Wait, what was that again? I'm sorry. C, the last sentence in C?
Yeah, I thought that,
If in reviewing the project proposal, the planning determines that other permits were required for development, make offense, maybe I should, yeah? And then contradicts A?
yeah, because C, it says that they can issue the permit, the way I read that, but alpha says it shall issue no permit. borough official shall issue no permit or grant no approval.
So C is permits or approvals required before development. Other permits or approvals required for development. Those are things like wetlands permits and driveway approaches permits from the state.
Okay.
So we're saying we're not going to, even though you might need permits from somewhere else, we're not going to hold you up because you need those permits.
Okay.
We're going to still issue you your building permit, but we're going to want to see the permit.
Yeah, but you still got to go get those permits.
You still got to get those
basically
permits.
what
Yeah,
you're saying.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. But we're not going to be like holding up
Oh,
our end of
yeah,
it because
okay,
you might need another permit. You're going to have
Okay.
to get them though.
You're
Now it
basically
makes
saying you're
sense.
not going to, you're not going to say, we're not going to issue it until you have those
Right.
other permits. So-
Right.
Right.
Okay, yeah, then we're good.
Although Joe may say otherwise because it says may.
I like the word may.
Yeah.
Gives you-
Better than shall.
And then I had a note on 1.3.020. I kind of thought we should add D, a lot that was allowed to be created by P&Z after the borough formation. Because if for some reason we allowed something to be created that, for whatever reason, doesn't meet our normal definition.
Well, you would only create a lot through the subdivision process. You're not allowed to create it any other way. So
Yeah, and
you shouldn't be
Okay.
allowed to.
we don't want to create lots that are non-conforming.
I'm just like, well, what if
We have
we
enough of
did?
those.
So what if we did, though?
We should
What if
not
there
be
was a
encouraging
reason?
that.
Yeah.
Just the scenario I thought of that I was thinking too much.
Article 4, and this is just 4.1 of Article 4.
Okay.
And that's just the review procedures.
Yeah.
And briefly, there are four types. Type 1 is just like now where you would come in to get a building permit, and we would review where you want to build, you're going to, that you're complying with setbacks, zoning's correct, blah, 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 all those basic things that we currently do. So that is just a purely administrative procedure. Type 2 is brand new, which is administrative review, which would mean we would review it in the office, but we would send out letters to the surrounding neighbors and say, someone has applied to do X. We are going to allow them to do X and make the decision on such and such day. If you have any concerns, please contact us before this day. If we don't get any feedback from anyone, then we'll go ahead and, make the administrative decision. And these are for things that are relatively minor, like a really small variance, things that don't really require too much variance, and the ones that you guys are generally sitting here saying, why are this even in front of us? So it'll be defined quite clearly in code so that it's not like we're just picking and choosing which ones we're going to do, but there'll be some numerical. So it's like a 10% change in variance. Someone needs a 2-foot variance. I think Joe and I could probably handle that internally without having to go through the whole procedure of the Planning Commission. And then type 3 is our usual process that we're all used to, that the application comes to the Planning Commission. The major change is that we're not going to have the acceptance and scheduling meeting like we do now, which is
Great.
adds another month to the process. But in exchange, we are extending, setting a deadline on when you have to have your application in so that we have enough time to get the letters out. So we'll have those dates set for the public. So when you set your meeting dates for the year, we'll set the application deadline dates. I think it's going to be 3 or 4 weeks beforehand, so that we have time to review it and get the letters out. And then type 4 is the same sort of thing. You review it, then it goes to the assembly, and that's for those zoning changes. and
That
things
was
like
my
that.
question on that, is
Yeah.
that Does that still go before the planning commission and we make a recommendation on that?
Yes.
Okay. The second thing on that was, are we going to be doing this same way it works right now, where we have a public hearing on it here and a public hearing at the Borough Assembly?
You know, I went back and forth because it wasn't clear, like I'm using a template, and it wasn't clear to me on how they,
Because I could see us.
We're doing
I
it.
could see us doing it where we make a recommendation, but it's not a public hearing. We do a recommendation based on the zoning facts of the issue, if it's a zoning change or something like that. And we're just doing it just on the facts of the issue and, input from borough staff, from the other boards. We make our recommendation. The public hearing is in front of the Borough Assembly, because they're the ones who have the right to make the decision anyway.
I like that. We're supposed to be the experts on the zoning, and they can handle dealing with the public on those issues, and we can just be the experts on the zoning.
I would say it doesn't really add any more time to your
Yeah.
meeting schedule, honestly. And
I'm just thinking it's kind of redundant, though, and people
It
have to
is.
show up at two public hearings,
Yeah.
and,
it isn't,
Oh.
because, and sometimes, I mean, I've seen you all ask some really good questions, which bring forward some information that isn't always obvious in the applications, and then that may or may not get asked by the assembly because they're not really accustomed to dealing with the same issues that
we
you
could
are.
leave it the same way.
Yeah, I
just was thinking about it, and that kind of popped into my head.
I
It's
had
like,
the
oh,
same
you
kind
know,
of
I don't know.
thing
Chris,
go through my mind too.
So,
but-
okay, let's take the Cavisto. Would that be number 2 or number 3?
No, Cavisto is just you.
Yeah, well, but I mean, that would be the type of decision
Oh,
that
I
I would
see.
expect you guys can make on your own, right? Or would you say that you'd want to bump it
We
upstairs?
would, if it didn't create a new lot, we would do it. It was just the line adjustment.
Right.
I think we would do that, we could do that as a 2.
As a 2?
But because I think technically we're creating a lot with the consolidation in there, it would probably go to a
Well, it's kind of like I think of it as like somebody putting a porch on their house, and the corner of that porch is going to go into the variance. I see you guys can make that decision. If half the porch is going to be on the variance, then you probably want the public, you want it coming before the planning commission.
But we'll have a number,
You know,
like we'll say,
so.
if there's a 10 to 20% variation,
Yeah.
it can be handled administratively, but if
Yeah.
it's outside of that, it'll come to the commission. And then if we get complaints, you better believe it's going to come
Come
here.
back to here, back to us.
Well, that would be what I was going to suggest, that you would deal with more, so people don't have to go through this very time-consuming process, that you'd make a decision, and if they didn't like the decision, then they could appeal it to us.
Yeah, they always have that option. And then
Right.
also we have, as staff, we have the option, if we send out these letters and we get back, we don't like this is not a good idea, then we have the option of just not making the decision ourselves and just bringing it to you at that point and say, well, everyone's really upset about this, so.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Yeah. Well, no, I understand. I mean, I just wanted it to be so that you could make the decisions like that, and that if, like you said, if people were upset with it, then they had an appeal process, so that, we don't have to waste your time, our time, and
And the public.
the public's time, yeah. I mean, go to a couple meetings, or we miss a meeting, I think that's the thing that's been irritating people.
I agree. I mean, there's a lot of things that you spend time on here that you really shouldn't have to spend a lot of time on, and that takes away from the time that you could be spending on things that really should, you should be able to devoting some time to.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, I just have a lot of faith in
Both Liz and Karen are easy to look up online and send an email to, so.
right.
We don't bother with Joe.
Yeah, we don't bother.
He doesn't have email.
The one that comes to mind is, when just recently when Bud Samuelson did that little line adjustment, I mean, why does that have to go any further? He moved the line over 5 feet, so he didn't create anything.
Yeah.
That's what I
that's
would
a
expect you guys
It's
to.
so simple
that you guys would
why-
just do
Why
that.
waste the time?
Yeah.
Coming around here and say,
Right.
Rick Brown went out, surveyed it, moved that line over
Right.
5 feet, because she wanted the back properties to be equal or something, I don't know what
Right.
it was.
Right.
I mean, it's like, so yet we have to go through all this letter writing and paper writing and meetings,
Right.
and it just seems like a waste of time and resources.
Yeah, that was
I mean,
my,
that was a simple one. There's other ones that have come for the past couple of
well,
years.
I can think about half of them.
Yeah.
Are pretty much that way, at least in my observation, the time that I've been here. I mean, as long as people have, if you make a decision, they don't like it, then they can come to us.
Like ours,
Or if we make a decision they don't like, then they can go to city council. That way, the public's protected. You guys don't waste your time, you don't waste our time. We don't, most importantly, we don't waste the time of the public.
That's the idea with
Yeah.
these,
Yeah, well, I mean, I like that. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what we were hoping you'd,
hoping it streamlines
yeah.
processes.
So, and then maybe, you know, it'd be interesting if you guys had some more examples, like said, okay, this is one we would do, this is one we would definitely send to you, this is a maybe, you know, and I mean, and then maybe we could say, yeah, you know, no, that's definitely something you should do. Or where we could say,
We will have there'll be a little table in here when it's all done, and it lays out, if you're doing this, it's a, you know, type 1. If you're going to do this, it's a type 2. So we'll
Yeah.
have all of that laid out in table form, so people can just say, oh, I'm doing a da-da-da.
That's that checklist.
It's
Is it in here already?
It's in here already.
You're talking about zoning checklist.
No, it's not the.
No, there's a table in here that tells
right at
you
the beginning
what's.
of 4.
It's right at the beginning of
April's
4.
Just an example for now.
Page 52.
Oh, thank you. The page numbers.
Yeah. Very good.
Except these are not exactly, well, good descriptions, I think, for the general public, exactly. So
Yeah.
I'd
Yeah.
like to improve on those descriptions so that people aren't saying, well, what is an adjustment? And you see I wrote minor variance in there to sort of give you an idea of what
Yeah.
I'm talking about. But we could probably be a little bit more descriptive in what the approval or what they're seeking is so that they would know.
Yeah, there should be more layman's terms.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
you could have the quick table and then like a list of more detailed descriptions after it. That way the table
The
fits
code
on
doesn't
one
have to be
sheet.
so long, yeah.
And just immediately following it, the list of the descriptions.
The cheat sheet that goes with the,
Because some people are real familiar with the process or will be, where other people, I don't even know what a variance is.
That's why the definition section is very important.
anyway. One last thing, and I don't need comments now, but just something to think about for the future is 4.1.060, which is the time limit. This template is from Oregon. It's what they use in small communities in Oregon. And they have a state statute that lays out a maximum time. It's the very last page. How much time the planning commission can have to make a decision. And then in state statute, they lay out the remedies if you don't meet that standard. But Alaska, we don't have anything in statute that can provide that guidance. And then when I looked at the Oregon statute, it basically just said, well, then you can just go to court and get, the court to say, city, you need to make a decision right now, or we will. And then you go back to the city and say, the court said that you need to make a decision now, or they will. And then it really is not really exactly robust. But I don't know if there's any interest in having a time limit on when a decision needs to be made. And then even if we did, what happens if the commission is unable to meet that time limit? We've had situations where we haven't had quorums and things have dragged on because we've had the acceptance and scheduling meeting, and then we don't have a quorum, and then we might have another meeting, and then we don't have the quorum, and so then things can stretch out at times for 4 months, which I would say down south is not unheard of, but we shouldn't be dragging things out that long.
We shouldn't be dragging things out. I mean,
I don't think we drag them out.
Yeah.
I think it's just the circumstance of what could
But
happen.
it's part of the thing people have to understand too, being in a community where a lot of people are out of town, especially in the summer months. You know, there are going to be times where we're not going to have a quorum. And if we need input from Harbor Board or something like that, and they don't have a quorum,
Yeah.
you know, it could delay things. I think the biggest thing is to make sure that we're not just putting stuff off indefinitely, at least that progress is being made, at least somebody is working on it. So as long as it's not addressed, if there's not a quorum, it needs to be addressed at the next meeting with a quorum. You know, it's not like we can put it off indefinitely.
I don't think that has happened, but
I don't think it has happened. I would just want to make sure it
I'm
doesn't.
trying to think. I think there was one case where someone put an application and we didn't have the quorum to accept.
Mhm.
And so then it went to the next meeting and then we were able to accept, and then we didn't have a quorum
Quorum,
for
so
the
we didn't
next
have the
one.
next meeting, yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then so then it pulled it out like 4 months, which
Yeah.
I don't think it was a big deal for this person, but it was
I don't
a long
think it's going to be
time.
as big a deal now since we do have a full commission. We should be able to get a quorum most of the time.
There's no guarantee it's going to stay that way, though.
Yeah.
True. But I'll just throw that out there as, you know, something to think about as far as a set time limit. And I'm not sure honestly, I'm not sure what the remedy would be if we didn't meet the time limit. The borough, actually in code right now, we have some time limits on certain actions, and we've exceeded those. And the borough attorney has said that meeting the time limit is not as important as having the planning commission's review. So they're pretty much not enforced. Right? So
Well, yeah, except you do also talk about the time limit on the neighbors to comment and stuff. That's also
right, that's different. Yeah. This
is our action.
us to-
Yeah,
This
this
is
is
3 and 4.
right. This is an overall from when we accept the application and say, yeah, the application's complete, to when the decision's actually made. So that's what they look at as, they have a 6-month time limit for that. I think I'll probably end up removing all of that for the draft, but I just want to let you know that they have it in theirs, and I'm probably going to take it out just because I don't see a way for us to really make that work here.
No, and if there's no teeth in it, there's no reason to have it.
Yeah, I mean, we really don't. Unless there's something else that someone thinks of that might work.
The one thing,
But Dave's got it.
no,
No.
I had one question on page 59. The failure of any person to receive any notice under this section where the records of the borough indicate notice was provided in a timely and proper manner shall not affect the validity of any proceeding under this section. That just basically gives you cover for somebody that said, I don't have a P.O. box, I don't listen to the radio, and I don't look at the sky for smoke signals.
I didn't provide you with a current address.
Right.
I didn't tell you I was going to be out of town for 2 months.
Yeah, okay.
I don't check my mail.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's just, you're just
That's-
putting that in there for cover for that, okay.
And I think actually it's in the code right now.
Right,
So I just copied it from our current code.
right.
Yeah.
That's good to have in there.
We make our best attempts, but
Happened before.
yes.
We had to go through the whole process. Somebody said they worked on the mail merge.
Remember a certain ballot initiative got up in front of the assembly and said something similar.
Liz, when do you expect to have it all done?
What kind of question is that?
Well, I'm just curious.
I'm pretty.
More importantly, when do you want our comments back on this?
Yes.
Well, I was really excited to have this for you. How's that sound?
I'm really impressed with your progress so far. Thank you.
Well, at the next meeting, I'll have 2 more sections for you guys to look at. And then with the hope that probably there'll be 1 more meeting and then a final draft, if it all goes as planned. I do have someone that, we have an outside consultant helping with this, and I would like to give him a chance to read it through, because I'm the only one that's read it through, and you know.
What makes sense to you?
After a while, I don't even see anything anymore. So it's good to have it just someone else who's a lot more familiar with zoning codes and has written zoning codes in the past to read it through for consistency and clarity and things like that. So, but he can do that as we're kind of looking at the final draft too. So, as long as we get everybody's comments in. And I would think that we would have a couple of public hearings before giving it to the assembly to give everyone a chance to say their piece.
I think definitely have public hearings and
At least
a reasonable public comment period too, where
Okay.
people have a chance to read through it and say what they want to say. So
Yeah, and I think at the next one I'll bring you the subdivision, because that a lot of that is new because it goes out into outside of Service Area 1. So I think that would be worth, and I'll try and get it to you sooner rather than later if I can. But I'll put it in the packet for sure. And it creates a new kind of subdivision, a remote subdivision with different standards than you would have in town for outside of service. Well, not just outside of Service Area 1, but for areas that don't have access. And
areas off-road access and
outside off of Mitkoff Island and areas on Mitkoff that aren't close to roads. So
where it's roads are not practical or likely.
Right. So, but then, anyway, so hopefully for the next time I'll have that and something else for you to look at, too.
That'll probably be the most controversial.
I would think, yeah. I looked a lot at what the state requires, and it's mostly guided by that, which is pretty minimal, legal and practical access. I think we should probably have a discussion on minimum lot sizes for areas without any services, something that the state doesn't currently enforce in any way. But it's not a whole lot different than what the state looks at for subdivision. And it's also a streamlined process, so if there's no public improvements involved, then it's, instead of a 2-step process like you would have in town for a major subdivision, it's just, approved, even if it's, 10 lots. If you're not doing any improvements on it, you don't building a road or anything, then you can just get it approved all at one time. So it's a little bit streamlined too, so.
And this isn't necessarily, and you're not going to aim it for, like, let's say a person that's got an acre lot out the road right now, they want to subdivide it. Is it aimed for that, or is it aimed for a larger subdivision?
It's for all subdivisions,
All
just like the state
subdivisions, okay.
does, and also consolidations, that the state also does consolidations. So the state requires a plat for any kind of subdivision and any kind of consolidation. So we actually don't require a plat for a consolidation right now. So we actually have a lower standard than the state does. And I think we'll probably be a lot less expensive as well, as far as just the fees for the process.
And then, once we have this in place, then we would take that authority away from the state then? Okay. That's
That would
the
be
final-
that
that's
would be the idea.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
okay.
I think once we have the ordinances in place, then we would ask for that. Well, we don't have to ask for it. We would just take it. Yeah.
And then this entire packet, when we get done, would that go on the ballot?
No, doesn't have to go on the ballot.
Okay. So the Borough Assembly can adopt it
Right, by ordinance.
by ordinance, okay.
Yeah.
So it's the usual public hearing, three votes on it process.
Right. That's why I think you're right. that we make sure we have a good process here, because it'll be a big document, and, 3 readings with only one public hearing on a really big document, that's not a lot. So it'd be nice to be able to
Have probably a couple of readings.
you could have a couple of hearings,
Yeah.
have it on the agenda a couple times.
Yeah, a couple of public hearings on it, and
Yeah.
definitely make sure it's out to the people for a period of time before we have our public hearings. People have a chance to sit down and read it and say, not that everybody's going to, I doubt very many will, but at least if people have a chance to do that.
Yeah, I wouldn't if it wasn't my job. Yeah. That will put us probably into the summer,
Yeah,
just so you know that,
yeah.
we're going to hit up against that probably. So, anyway, that's what I have right now. Like I said, feel free to send in some questions or whatever if you notice anything else.
Thank you, Liz.
Yeah.
Yes.
And just wanted to throw in, sorry to bring this back up, but they floated that trail.
Yeah.
Yes, no, I don't think Nancy, like I said, I looked into filling that exact same lot 20 years ago. It wasn't going to be that much money.
Yeah, mass excavating.
I was thinking about,
Well,
well,
if
I'm
you're-
gonna,
If you're building buildings and stuff that you're worried about settling or
Yeah, right.
parking lots, and stuff, that's one thing. For a gravel parking lot for the airport, I don't think we need to get too crazy on
Yeah, I would think
building.
50,000, under $100,000.
I'm gonna ask Deb Thompson tomorrow if I can include, well, I'm floating a citizens initiative for ATVs, and there's gonna be registration fees. That could potentially be a money source. But I got to ask Deb tomorrow if that can work that way. I'd probably get a lot more support for my ATV thing, too.
All right, well, if we have no further items, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Oh, when are we going to meet next?
Yes.
You already have set a
March.
schedule for the year.
Third
Oh, yeah.
Tuesday, 4:30.
Oh, that's right, okay. And is 4:30 a hard and firm time?
Yep.
Okay.
What?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Now we're over.
Wait.